So there are three new iPhones that are being released this year: the iPhone 8, the iPhone 8 Plus, and that major redesign, the iPhone 10. Now everyone just wants the iPhone 10, obviously. It's the best iPhone that Apple released this year, the best looking one, and the most advanced one when it comes to technology, features, and everything. But it's way too expensive. It starts at $1,000 or £1,000 in the UK, and it's actually even more than that in other countries. So what about the iPhone 8? It has mostly the same specs and mostly the same features as the iPhone 10, but it's also cheaper. It's much cheaper than the iPhone 10. So if you're coming from, let's say, an iPhone 7, should you actually upgrade to the iPhone 8? Is it worth the upgrade? But what about if you're coming from something older, like an iPhone 6s and such? So here's everything you need to know between the iPhone 8, the iPhone 7. So yeah, everything in terms of design, specs, display, special features, capacity, price, everything you need to know, battery, covered in this video. So grab some snacks and enjoy. Okay, so starting off with the design first. Design-wise, the iPhone 8 has almost the exact same design as the iPhone 7. So the only difference is the glass back, which Apple claims that it's the most durable glass in the smartphone. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they mean by durable, because it can mean, durable when it comes to drops, so impact resistance, or it can be durable when it comes to scratches. So I'm not sure which one of these Apple actually means. We'll have to see in a few days. Now, another difference is when it comes to the colors. So the iPhone 7 used to come in 6 colors. So black, jet black, silver, gold, rose gold, and also a new red color. Now the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus, they actually come in 3 colors. So only 3 colors. We have black or space gray, then silver, and a new gold color, which I actually think looks much better than the old gold and rose gold color options. Now when it comes to the dimensions, the iPhone 8 is actually both thicker and heavier than the iPhone 7. So the iPhone 8 is now 7.3 millimeter thick versus 7.1 that the iPhone 7 was, and the iPhone 8 Plus is now 7.5 millimeters thick versus 7.3 that the iPhone 7 Plus was. And weight-wise, the iPhone 8 now weighs in at 148 grams versus 138 grams, and the iPhone 8 Plus weighs in at 202 grams versus 188 grams on the iPhone 7 Plus. So what does this all mean? Well, basically only new cases for the iPhone 8. So if you have some really tight cases that you used on the iPhone 7, you would need new cases. But if you have some silicone cases that were a bit loose, those might still fit, but you will most likely need new cases. But overall, design-wise, the iPhone 8 is just an old design. So it's essentially the fourth generation iPhone 6. Essentially. So this could be called the iPhone 6s SS, essentially. And when you compare this design to something like a Samsung Galaxy S8, an S8 Plus, or a Note 8, or even the iPhone 10, the iPhone 8 looks so old and outdated. So design-wise, I would say that this is a really strong reason not to upgrade, because you're not getting anything new except for obviously the glass back, which I do personally like. I actually prefer having a glass back than an aluminum back. But that's just me. Most people actually prefer having an aluminum back because you don't get smudges, you don't get scratches that easily, and it's also more durable. Let me know in the comments, by the way, glass back or aluminum back on a phone. Which one would you guys prefer? Now, moving on to section number 2, we have the display. So we actually have a few changes when it comes to the display, but first I just want to talk about what remained the same. So display size is the same, 4.7 inches on the iPhone 8, 5.5 on the 8 Plus, same as with the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. Now, when it comes to the display resolution, we have 1334 by 750 on the iPhone 8, which gives us a PPI of 328, and 1920 by 1080 on the iPhone 8 Plus. So same as on the iPhone 7 Plus, which gives us a PPI of 401. Now, we do get one display improvement, and that's a True Tone display on the iPhone 8. So same as we have on the iPad Pros, the 2017 iPad Pros, or the 2016 9.7 inches iPad Pro, it basically adjusts the color temperature of the display based on the current lighting conditions. So it's a pretty cool feature to have. It's not that, obviously a ProMotion display, a 120 Hertz display panel would have been much more useful. But, this one is one of those features that's, pretty nice to have. Moving on to the camera, we finally have some pretty big changes here. So the front-facing camera actually remained the same. So we have the exact same front-facing camera as on the iPhone 7. So 12 megapixel sensor on both f2.2 aperture and then 1080p video recording up to 30 frames per second. But the back-facing camera actually got a few pretty big changes. So the first one is in terms of video. We're getting 4K video at 60 frames per second, this is massive. So 4K video at 60 frames per second, this is something that, well, no other phones can do. So this is the first phone in the world that supports it. Now the Note 8 will be getting a software update to enable 4K 60, but it's not out yet in all regions. So that's coming soon. But the iPhone 8, which is getting released this Friday, this is going to be the first phone in the world to support 4K video at 60 frames per second. And what's even more interesting about supporting 4K at 60 is that not even a lot of cameras support it. So one example would be the Panasonic GH5, which by the way I'm using to record this video with. And this one can do 4K 60, but it's like a 2,000-pound camera. So obviously this thing is expensive compared to an iPhone 8. So it's almost double the price, and the iPhone 8 is a phone. Now this is because of that Apple A11 processor, which I'm going to get in more detail soon. But now let's talk about a few more additions to the camera. So the camera on the iPhone 8 now supports 24p video recording, so 24 frames per second. So if you want to get that cinematic look, you can already do that straight from the camera app. You don't have to download a third-party app. So this is pretty useful when it comes to cinematography and videography. And also, speaking of video, slow motion got some pretty big updates. So now the iPhone 8 can do 1080p in up to 240 frames per second, whereas the iPhone 7 was limited to 720p in up to 240 frames per second, or 1080p in 120. So yeah, we are getting some big updates when it comes to slow motion. And then another big update is the sensor itself. So the sensor has been improved. It's a brand new sensor. And Apple says that it actually lets up to 83% more light into the camera. So yes, much better low light photography thanks to that new sensor. And the colors and everything do look more vibrant on the iPhone 8 than on the iPhone 7. So the iPhone 8 also comes with something called a smart camera, which I'm going to cover in a second. And besides this, the flash has also been improved. So we get a True Tone flash on both, but on the iPhone 8, we get something called True Tone flash with slow sync. So what this does is that it syncs up with the shutter speed on the camera, and basically all the shots that you take with the flash in low light are gonna look much more natural than the ones on the iPhone 7, for example. And then finally, we also have a pretty unique feature on the iPhone 8, and that's portrait lighting. So this one basically eliminates the background, so you can add some sort of like studio type look and feel to your photos, so you can change the light. It looks pretty interesting. It seems to work pretty well from what I've seen. And other than that, we have no changes to the cameras. So by the way, we still don't have optical image stabilization on the zoom lens, on the telephoto lens on the iPhone 8 Plus. So same as on the iPhone 7 Plus, we only have optical image stabilization on the regular lens of the dual camera module. So if you take shots with the zoom lens, they're gonna be, more shaky, and low light is pretty bad on the zoom lens. So yeah, no changes when it comes to the cameras except for these. Next up, let's move on to the specs. So in terms of the RAM, we get the exact same amount of RAM on both of these phones. So on the iPhone 8, we have 2 GB of RAM, same as on the iPhone 7, and 3 GB of RAM on the iPhone 8 Plus, same as on the iPhone 7 Plus. So the biggest difference when it comes to specs and performance is in terms of that new Apple A11 processor. So A10 on the iPhone 7, A11 on the iPhone 8. Now the A10 was already crazy powerful, but the Apple A11 is even more insane. So it's a 6-core processor now, but all cores are actually independently addressable. And by the way, these are the Geekbench 4 scores of the Apple A11 chip. And they're actually higher than a 13-inch MacBook Pro, which is crazy. Now, the iPhone 7 was already really powerful, so it was comparable to a 2015 13-inch MacBook Pro. So both of these phones are really, really fast and crazy powerful. Okay, but why would you actually need so much performance in a phone? Well, you probably don't. I mean, most people just use their phones for, social media like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, web browsing, and so on. Sometimes even for YouTube videos. But nothing really demanding like music production or 4K video editing, which by the way, you can do both on both of these phones. And Apple also says that the cameras on the iPhone 8 have been optimized for AR, by the way. And that's because of that Apple A11 processor. So you should be able to see improved AR on the iPhone 8 Plus versus on the iPhone 7 Plus, for example. Now, moving on to the special features, we get a few new features on the iPhone 8. So actually more than you would expect. The first one is actually Bluetooth 5.0. So we finally get Bluetooth 5.0 versus Bluetooth 5.2 on the iPhone 7. And the Bluetooth 5.0 actually has twice the signal strength and the signal penetration, and also a range of up to 200 meters, which is really, really impressive. Now, something cool about Bluetooth 5.0 is that it can actually it lets you connect up to 2 devices, audio devices at the same time. So you can listen to 2 separate AirPods, so to say, and have different songs on both. Now, Apple hasn't said anything about this, by the way. So at some point we will see this, because obviously headphones need to support Bluetooth 5.0 as well. So do expect an update in the future to both iOS and updated headphones, AirPods, and so on with Bluetooth 5.0 to support this. Then a second new feature on the iPhone 8 would be wireless charging. Now, what's really cool about this is that it actually works with any key-enabled charger, or Qi, I think that's how you pronounce it. Any Qi-enabled charger, wireless charger. So any cheap charger from Amazon will indeed be supported, which is definitely not something that I was expecting Apple to do. And also something regarding the display, the iPhone 8 actually supports playback of Dolby Vision and HDR10, even though, the display cannot actually show HDR10 and Dolby Vision, because, only the iPhone 10 can do that. Only the iPhone 10 has a true HDR display. So HDR content would still work on the iPhone 8, but it won't look as good as on the iPhone 10. Now, going back to the Apple A11 chip, the iPhone 8 obviously has the Apple A11 chip, and it's actually called the Apple A11 Bionic chip. And that's because it has a dedicated neural engine, which is found on both the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus. And on the iPhone 10, it's used for Face ID and emojis, but it's not really used on the iPhone 8 other than the smart camera, which, by the way, in case you don't know, it basically analyzes the elements from a scene, and then it adjusts the settings for that specific scene for the camera. So every single shot that you take, the vibrancy will be increased if needed, shutter speed will be adjusted much better and more accordingly to that shot compared to the iPhone 7, for example. But yeah, other than that, the neural engine is not really used for anything yet. So I do see this being used in the future for maybe a smarter version of Siri, I believe. So it's actually a future-proof feature to have. So definitely get the iPhone 8 if you think that Apple will be using this in the future. No, not really. But it's one of those features that's actually future-proofing your device for future iOS updates. Okay, so we've seen the design, the display, the specs, the special features. What about a battery? Well, the battery, in terms of the battery, the iPhone 8 actually has a smaller battery than the iPhone 7. Same applies to the iPhone 8 Plus versus the iPhone 7 Plus. So 2,675 on the iPhone 8 Plus versus 2,900 on the iPhone 7 Plus, and 1821 on the iPhone 8 versus 1960 milliamp hours on the iPhone 7. So quite a big difference, to be honest. Now, the Apple 11 chip is indeed more power efficient than the Apple 10 is, because it's finally based on a smaller 10 nanometer process. And so the battery life should be essentially about the same. Now, if you go on Apple's website, they actually say that the battery should be about the same. They don't say exactly the same, they say about the same, which means that it's not really as good as on the iPhone 7, a tiny bit worse. Then the iPhone 8 also supports quick charging, so you can charge it in up to 50% in just 30 minutes. But by the way, that won't work with the included adapter. So the adapter that you get in the box, the power charger, the charger, that won't work. That won't give you quick charging. So instead you have to use a more powerful charger, such as, for example, a MacBook charger with a USB-C to Lightning cable. And in that case, you have quick charging. So the iPhone 8 kind of has quick charging, but not really. Now, moving on to the storage options, the iPhone 7 used to come in 32, 128, and then 256 gigabytes. Now, the 256 gig option was indeed removed now, and the iPhone 8 comes with 64 and 256, so 2 options. Now, this is both good and bad on the iPhone 8. It's good that basically the baseline option has been doubled in capacity from 32 to 64, which is obviously really good, but it's also bad because if you were using a 128 gigabytes iPhone 7 or 7 Plus like I am, now you have to upgrade to the 256 iPhone 8, which, by the way, is more expensive now than the 128 iPhone 7. Okay, so when it comes to the price, the iPhone 8 is more expensive than the iPhone 7 was at launch. I'm not sure how many of you have noticed this, but yes, the iPhone 8 more expensive than the iPhone 7 used to cost when it was launched. So the iPhone 8 now starts at £700 in the UK versus £600 like it was before, so £100 more expensive, which is a pretty big difference. And yes, that's exactly $700 in US, because Apple now uses a 1-to-1 conversion ratio for US and UK, and outside the UK it's even more expensive than that. So prices are really, really bad right now. And then the iPhone 8 Plus, it starts at $800 or £800. So depending on which model you get, the iPhone 8 is about almost £100 or $120 more expensive than the iPhone 7 was. And the iPhone 7, if you get it brand new, because you can buy an iPhone 7, Apple still sells it. It's about $50 or £50 cheaper, but it's not cheap enough, honestly. For a 1-year-old smartphone, just $50 off an iPhone 7 or £50, it's not enough. Okay, so in the end, should you upgrade from the iPhone 7 or the iPhone 7 Plus to the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 8 Plus? Definitely not. No, don't upgrade, seriously. If you want to upgrade, go for the iPhone 10. If you can afford it, if you can easily afford it. But just don't get the iPhone 8. It's essentially the same design for 4 generations already. And even if it wasn't for, the same design, you're still getting the same resolution display as back in 2014. I mean, come on, Apple. Everyone else is offering Quad HD displays. Even, with the iPhone 10, it's almost Quad HD. 720p, well, just over 720p on the iPhone 8. And it's still an LCD display, even though it's the best LCD display on the market in terms of color reproduction. But then not even to mention those really, really thick front bezels. So even though the iPhone 8 has the features of a 2017 smartphone, it kind of looks like a 2014 smartphone. So I would say, honestly, get the iPhone 10 if you can afford it. But only if you can easily afford it. Otherwise, just wait until 2018 when the iPhone 10 is going to be cheaper, and Apple is most likely going to release 2 iPhone models in 2018, 2 OLED iPhones, and they're going to remove this design for the iPhone 8, most likely. Now, if you have an iPhone 6s or an iPhone 6, I would still say don't upgrade to the iPhone 8 yet. Just try and get the iPhone 10 if you can afford it, or wait until next year. If you have an iPhone 5s or an iPhone 5, then yes, an iPhone 8 would be a pretty good option. I still won't recommend it because it's way too expensive than, for such an old design and such an old display and such a low resolution. But if you have like a carrier deal, then the iPhone 8 would be a pretty good choice if you're coming from a 5S or older. But yeah, aren't that what to subscribe if you want to see more in-depth comparisons like this one. Oh, and also don't forget to enable notifications on my channel so that you get notified as soon as I upload a brand new epic video. By the way, there's an epic unboxing and first impression of the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus coming soon. Definitely stay tuned for that. Other than that, feel free to give a like if you have enjoyed it, to let me know. And also let me know in the comments if you're epic enough to make it until the end of this fairly long video. And also let me know in the comments which one of these phones are you gonna pick up and why. Or the iPhone 10, or which one and why. And yeah, this has been pretty much it. So thank you for watching. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Zenof Tech, signing out. Cheers.